Building Success Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Ellis, and today I have with me John Clark. John, as you may be able to see on his shirt, he's the Vice President of Sales and Marketing for Advanced Business Solutions, based out of Louisville, ABS. They are a managed IT service provider. I probably butchered some of that and missed some of that. I'll let John fill in some of those gaps, but John, welcome, man. Thank you for coming on.
Matt, appreciate you inviting me, man. We've loved the idea when you brought it to me. We're talking to so many clients about CMMC. What does it mean? Do I have to do it? So getting to a broader audience more quickly is pretty exciting. I appreciate you inviting us to do this. You did a great job with the ABS intro. We're 31 years old this year. Managed services, cybersecurity, and general IT consulting. The idea is we help our clients with their day-to-day needs and guide them into the future, including with CMMC stuff.
Thank you for that, man. And so I do want to point out, we did pivot a little bit here. Generally, we're maybe hitting on leadership topics, or if anybody's watched any of them, we kind of go into some leadership deep dives, things like that. That said, a big hot button topic, maybe the most popular acronym amongst the federal government right now, especially in our arena, is CMMC. And I thought, man, we need to probably do a brief, podcast on CMMC. It's real. It's coming. We're going to get into a lot of the hysteria maybe around it and why people may have been pushing it off, and the government delaying it multiple times has a lot to do with that. But as you know, John, and as I know, because you guys are helping us down that road, it's coming. It's not going away. They're going to do it. Later on this year, you're going to start seeing it in contracts. It costs money. It's not necessarily cheap to do, but it's going to be a requirement if you want to interact with the federal government. So I thought it would be good to get this out in front of some of our clients or anybody that may be interested in it for a variety of reasons. Another reason is leading them to somebody that can help them along the CMMC journey, because I can assure you that this is not something that you can just Google CMMC and say, oh yeah, I think I could check the boxes on this right here and get this done. It takes a pretty concentrated effort, and I know, John, you'll get into some of that as we
Absolutely.
go down through the podcast here. But from a high level, man, can you tell us what CMMC is, and then why is the federal government going to go down the road of implementing CMMC into contracts?
Yeah, but I like to try to keep it high level in layman's terms. So I'm gonna do my best to keep technical speak out. If I use an acronym and I don't tell you what it is, please ask me so we make sure that the listeners are educated on it. But CMMC, Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification, and it is brought to us by the Department of Defense. In a sense, it's a compliance and cybersecurity framework. We're seeing at ABS, we support all kinds of industries, and we're seeing a rise in people paying more attention to their supply chain in a way to keep them protected from cybersecurity attacks. And that's what the DoD is doing, is, essentially they're protecting the nation by doing this. So it is going to apply to prime contractors and subcontractors. So companies that are doing business directly or indirectly with the DoD, they need to at least investigate and understand where they are and where they need to be, especially if it's a part of their core business model. It's a number of things, Matt. They're looking at policies and procedures. They're looking at cybersecurity. They're looking at technical positioning and things like that. One of Tucker Oldham, give him a quick shout out. He's our lead on this product that we deliver our clients. A VCISO, Cyber Information Security Officer, I believe is what that stands for. He educates me a lot on this, and he's told me stories of, one of them that comes to mind is the F-5 fighter jet, that all of a sudden China had one that looked awfully familiar to what we have. And of course, we've got the best weapons and technology in the military. But it turns out China got a hold of those through a subcontractor from a project that had somewhere like some crazy number of 20,000 contractors on it. I think that, among other things, was one of their eye-opening things of like, okay, we got to start protecting ourselves through the supply chain, not just ourselves. So again, high level CMMC, it's for the primes and the subs, and it's to keep them protected, which means you're probably going to have to protect yourself better than you ever have, which is also good for your business, not just to get the revenue and the business from DoD, but you're securing yourself at the same time.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because that kind of segues into what I wanted to talk about next in our journey. And, you mentioned the F-35. That's a significant national defense or national security issue. We're in the construction space. For years, you could go on to SAM.gov And if you're going to bid on a project, you're going to bid on a operations facility, some military installation, you can go and download the blueprints. That's while that's not as significant as an F-35, it's still significant to our national security interest. And so trying to shore that kind of stuff up. You mentioned the health of your IT. And I think that's where the relationship between, so you guys, there's no secret, ABS is they're our managed IT service provider. We were wild west with it for years and years. And I want to detail this journey a little bit. Known John and his crew and David and Tucker and Sam and Mark and Nikki, a lot of the people there at ABS through a leadership group that were in Louisville. We just legit wild west our IT for years. And it was an out of sight, out of mind thing. It's like, does the internet work? Cool, we're good. And we had phishing attempts and fell victim to them and all the things. And then you start to hear some of the horror stories about some companies that we know, some companies that are local there to Louisville, local to Lexington, who had entire infrastructure systems within their company locked down by hackers and had to pay well into the six figures for ransoms and policies, and it turned into kind of a nightmare. And so we said we should probably take this pretty seriously. So we brought you guys in pretty early on. We didn't have anything except for some routers and some Wi-Fi equipment and things like that. And I'm sure you guys were probably like, "Holy crap, this is the crap show." But nonetheless, we got going with you guys on that. We started hearing the language of CMMC years ago.
Yeah.
This has been talked about now for at least 5 years, maybe even longer, maybe 6 years. And it just kept getting pushed down the road and pushed down the road and pushed down the road. It was coming in 2021 and then 22 and then 23. And so each time it felt like it was getting a little more serious, a little bit more stuff put around it. And so we contacted you guys. I think it was about probably this time last year, maybe even before. And really started to set aside some budget information and said, because we are in the federal government space, and we need to take this seriously. We need to try and get ahead of others so that we can talk about our journey and try to help our clients along that journey. And that's kind of where you guys entered the picture to say, hey, we're going to walk this walk with you and help you guys do it. And we have, and it's been a learning experience for all of us. I mean, it's not
Yeah.
an easy thing. And I know you're going to get into some of that. It's been very complicated, but it's been great working with you guys and Tucker to get this thing taken. What do they say? How do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? And that's what
One
we've had.
bite, baby.
Yeah, one bite at a time. But we're at the finish line now. We got our mock audit coming up. And then after we get our mock audit done, we're going to have our actual audit scheduled with the idea that we're fully compliant by September, October this year. Knock on wood. So
Let's go.
and so thank you guys for that. But that's kind of, I wanted to paint that picture because I wanted everyone to know that this has been, for us, has been going on well in excess of a year just on the CMMC piece, not to mention you guys kind of coming in and getting us right from an IT perspective. So with that kind of being said, can you talk a little bit about that timeline, John? I know it's been
Yeah.
irked a lot and maybe kind of the ABS approach. I know you have a very specific approach for kind of how you guys go about it.
If I can touch on your all's path a little bit, you're not unlike other companies that we've worked with that, and this kind of touches on the timeline too, but before they made it official, there was, it's coming and you need it by this date. And then that date would move and it would move and it would move. But then speculation started happening. People's opinions were online. The businesses in the same industry start talking, and that kind of created this illusion of like it's not really that real. So we would start and stop and start and stop and start and stop, which I would imagine some of your audience here kind of are in the same kind of boat. And the thing that we like to paint the picture of is the 5 stages of grief, which is denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. The denial phase is the hardest part to get over of why is this happening to me? I've got a 20-year-old business and I've been doing great things. Why do I have to do this now? Then they get mad because they realize how much money it's potentially going to cost them. And then they try to negotiate. And then it's like, oh no, this is real. And they start to get depressed. Finally it's like, all right, I want to keep my business running. So it is what it is. I got to do this. And you finally get through that. But I remember, you all were one of the first ones we started working with on CMMC. We've done plenty of other compliance work, but it was new to everybody, not just you guys that it's directly impacting, but the government. They just announced it November of last year what the final things were. we always knew NIST, National Institute of Standards and Technologies. We always knew that that was going to be kind of the baseline. But you guys aren't unlike other companies. I'm sure, like I said, others that are listening to us today probably in a similar boat. So yeah, all the speculation, everything leading up to November of 2025, the government released it. They said, here's the finalized framework. Here's your timelines of what you've got to do. And we've even heard from other clients that they started seeing it in their contracts. I don't know if you guys are seeing it yet.
We haven't seen it in an actual contract that we have gotten. We have had clients who have come to us and said, we want to bid this job, but here's a CMMC language in this job. What do? We ask them, are you CMMC compliant? No, this thing bids, today's the 31st of March. This thing bids on April 5th. And we're like, sorry, man, you're not going to be able to do it. So we have seen it
Yeah.
from that perspective.
So and again, I'm going to try to keep it high level in layman's terms. Between November of 25 and November of 2026, companies like you guys have a chance to self-attest. Basically, you do an assessment on yourself, you come up with an SPRS score, you turn all that into the DoD. My translation of that is they knew people needed time to become certified, and they can't really force you, especially in your contract, because maybe they wouldn't get a whole lot of work done. But that was kind of the way to limp along while you on the side worked on actually getting your certification. When they released this, they released 3 levels, level 1, 2, and 3, very creative. We see that 90 to 95%, and when I say we, I'm talking about the experts at ABS and their peer groups that they belong to, where they're talking about all this stuff. 90 to 95% fall into level 2. But I'll start with level 1. And with any compliance, just kind of a general review of compliance, whether it's HIPAA, SOC, FINRA, what have you, CMMC, there are controls inside of that compliance. Each control is basically telling you a description of what you need to do to pass your audit. And level 1, it's the easiest, but it doesn't apply to a lot of people. It has 15 controls in it. You don't have to have the expensive formal audit. You can self-attest every year. And it's for companies who access federal contract information, FCI, like getting access to RFPs. That's the easiest example. But I bet those RFPs are going to say, hey, to win this, you got to have level 2. So that's kind of my translation again of like, not a whole lot of people are just going to stop at level 2. Level 2 is where it gets a little hairy. Where you have 15 controls in level 1, you have 110 controls in level 2. Controls are, again, the policies and procedures that you have written down and that you're following. What does your technology look like? Where does the data live? How does your cybersecurity look? It's all about how are you protecting the government is the simple way to put it. But you have to have that formal audit done underneath level 2. Level 3, if there's anybody listening to us on level 3, I'd love to chat with them because I'd be curious about their business. It has 134 controls, but you have to have things like nuclear codes, top secret information, and anything that exceeds that CUI level. Again, 90 to 95% of companies, they're going to fall into that level 2 area.
That's really good, John. And if you remember when it first came out, they had 5 levels. So you had a level 1 through 5, and they've dumbed it down a little to the level 1, 2, and 3. I appreciate you reminding me on the part on the self-attestation, for your level 1 piece. But to your point, it starts to get a little more serious when you go into level 2. Now, I really liked your all's approach. You kind of have a three-pronged approach to how you guys kind of come in and look at someone, where you come in and you do an assessment. Then there's the remediation efforts. And those remediation efforts could be, and I don't want to speak for you here, I might be helping to sell your job here, but part of those remediation efforts might be first to build that IT infrastructure that you need. Yep. And the third part is the auditor, which you guys can't. It can't do. It's got to be a third party. But I'd like to understand, or have the viewers understand. John gets a call tomorrow. Hey, listen to your podcast. We got to get going on CMMC. What's ABS doing? What's their approach the minute you hang that phone up?
So you can think of it in terms of it's about a 6 to 12 month journey from start to audit, right? Your auditor is referred to as a C3PAO. There's only like 80 of them in the country. Their calendars are booking fast, and that factors into your timeline. But we see a lot of clients coming to us I don't want to say this late in the game because it's not too late, but other people have started before you. But they've had their head in the sand. And I say that very respectfully speaking. they don't know where they are and where they have to get to. And that's what the assessment is designed for. So whether you use a company like ABS or you can try to do it yourself, I definitely don't recommend it. There's a lot of translating that has to happen, but get an understanding of where you are through an assessment. And we use a governance, compliance, and readiness software, commonly referred to as a GRC software, that helps with this, the entire journey, really. But we'll take those 110 controls, we'll take you through an assessment, and at the end of that assessment, you're going to have that SPRS score that you have to turn into the DoD, but you're also going to have what we call a plan of action and milestones, POAM. There's a ton of acronyms in IT, and the introduction of this is just, giving me a whole bunch more. But basically, your plan of action and milestones is, what don't I have? What do I have to clean up? What do I have to adjust? And that's going to be a list of policies and procedures. That's going to be a list of technical upgrades. Maybe you have to migrate your email and where your data lives in Microsoft Cloud. Maybe you've got to deploy a bunch of security tools, but it's all looking at that 110. It's a gap assessment, right?
Right.
So you can take that gap assessment and you can take it with you and remediate it on your own. But 9.5 times out of 10, they need help from somebody to start the remediation. So what we end up doing for clients, we have a head start. We have, well-documented templates that we can sit down and work with the clients, key stakeholders, and say, okay, help me understand how you do it today. And how you do it today might meet what is required, but you got to document it, and then you got to get your employees to recognize it, and then you got to get them to actually do it. That's kind of that checkbox thing, that the way the government designed this is they're going to come make sure you're actually doing it, not just a piece of paper that you've turned in.
Yeah.
You're not sending them a packet of information. They're actually going to come to your facility and make sure you're actually doing it. It's a lot like SOC 2 Type 2, which we have, and we have an auditor come in. But you're going to have to deploy security tools. You're going to have to find what the security tools are. There's a whole strategy to that. Very often, the biggest gap that we find, Matt, is the technical debt that you guys had. So you have Best Buy network hardware. Well, that's not going to satisfy the government. You need to go to an enterprise class. So we have to upgrade that. We'll find that you're in Microsoft 365, but that particular version that Microsoft created, it replicates data overseas. So under CMMC, you have to keep all of your data in the US. So now we got to migrate your email again, even though you might have done it last year. Like a lot of businesses have made that shift over the last 5 to 8 years.
Right.
But we can help with all of those things. The part on the company is from the leadership, making sure that it's implemented and pushed through the entire company. So that remediation effort is like, okay, I've got 15 things in this list that I have to do. And with us, we'll give budgetary numbers on that POAM. All right, now I know what my budget is. This is how I'm going to attack it. These are my priorities. Now we start to put together a true plan. And you guys are awesome. You're going to be done in September, October. Well, how do we help companies get to November? Begin with the end in mind is always the best way to run a project, right? So now we have all the information to say, how do we get there? How fast do we have to go? What's the budget? Once that's done, you get the auditor in, and I'll knock on wood as well. You pass the audit, but part of that CMMC is ongoing work. Again, I'm going to reemphasize the operationalization of CMMC. You're going to have to do things like once a quarter, sit down and do a mock scenario of an incident. So one of the policies you have to have is an incident response plan.
Yep.
This made up scenario happened. Everybody that's documented in that plan is sitting around the table and walking through who does what. You have to do disaster recovery tests on any of your systems. So if you have servers in your office or in the cloud, we got to make sure backups are working. And if something bad happens, we can recover, right? Evidence gathering. You have to have, of course, everybody's got antivirus, but all these security tools, are they active? Are they installed everywhere? Do I get all of the logs? All of that information has to be gathered. That's what we use that GRC tool for. Most companies don't have an internal resource that can dedicate part of their job to running compliance for their company. So we're kind of almost like a quarterback or a coach in this scenario, that we're just helping you run the playbook.
Yeah.
And we're trying to pull some of that effort off of you guys. Ultimately, we're just guiding and consulting. There's a lot of participation. It's a true partnership that we have to do. So that's the three-pronged approach. It's the assessment, and then you got to remediate it to pass your test, and then you got to keep it ongoing. because what you have to do every 3 years, you got to invite that auditor back in. It's an expense that you're just
Yep.
going to have to start budgeting for. But the years in between your formal audits, you also have to self attest. So with like SOC 2 Type 1, which is what we used to have, there'd be a point in time in the year where it's like, oh no, we got to get ready. We got to turn our paperwork in and we're scrambling and we're just updating paperwork. That's not what you can do with CMMC. You're constantly collecting that information. So when the auditor comes in, you can just, hand it to them. And they're going to be looking to make sure that you are ongoing maintaining this compliance or governing this compliance. Some clients choose to take that governance on their own. We're just happy to help no matter where it is. So if we just want to do an assessment, give you the roadmap, you guys go on, you've already got your own MSP, they can do some installation of stuff by all means. But again, vast majority of the time, they just end up asking us to help them get from start to finish.
A lot to unpack there, but a lot of really good points there. You talked a little bit about the checking of the boxes and some of the stuff that you're going to have to do. And I think it still kind of goes back. And I'm almost just asking for the mercy of use us as an example. Because to your point, we had our head in the sand on it. Admittedly, we had IT as an ancillary responsibility to some people at one point. We had it as an intern at one point, so like we weren't taking it serious. And I think it's becoming something that you mentioned the word budget. It's becoming a thing that you just have to budget for now, where you can't go in there and just check the box. We sat down, obviously, we're in the phase of starting to all these policies and procedures that you guys have helped us put into place. We're in the process of building up our documentation and our proof of how we're doing them. Everybody taking the necessary trainings once a month or once a quarter. I sat down to your point about the incident response. We did the mock incident response. It's probably been about a month ago. And of course, Thursday afternoon, there's no better place I'd rather be than with Tucker. Tucker, if you're watching this, nothing against you. But I mean, I legit had to sit, we sat down. They said, Matt, you got to be on this meeting as the CEO of the company. And in a lockdown type situation like this, it's crucial to talk about the steps that we're going to take to mitigate this as quickly as possible. And Tucker ran through a series of questions. This is what happened. What do you want to do here? What here? What here? What here? And that's all part of building up that documentation, the roof, and the infrastructure that we have there. I think you kind of mentioned it in the terms of leadership, and you and I talked a little bit about this as we started this. I do worry about somebody doing the self attestation and kind of check. Oh yeah, man, I'm level one, I'm good. And I'm not trying to scare anybody away, but it's not $1,000. It's a significant investment in health of your company and in our national security. I'm curious how you keep people from just trying to turn this into a checkbox exercise, if that starts from the top or education or what. Curious what your perspective is on that.
It can be hard to help people get out of that denial and the grief stage of this. Oftentimes, just going through the process of the assessment opens their eyes. They start to understand what a lift this is. And some companies, Matt, they may have two contract and it's kind of a smaller part of their business. And they're like, you know what, I'm just going to drop that and I'll go focus over here. But you guys, this is your core business. You don't really
Right.
have a choice. So taking them through that process is usually what starts to open their eyes. We have seen companies try it on their own or take the trunk slammer Joe with his hammer and doing it for $1,000. They learn a difficult and costly lesson when that auditor comes in. Again, it's the operationalization of this in your company. They're going to come in and find that out very, very quickly. That's another place where they learn, oh boy, I probably should have listened to people telling me not to treat it like a checkbox. It's not just forms to fill out on a yearly basis like I was talking about earlier. The auditor makes sure you live and breathe that every single day. The biggest realization they start to have is when they see that requirement in their contracts. So I would imagine if you've already got your certification, you probably have a leg up whenever you're bidding on these things. Well, if you're starting to lose business now, well, November 26th, you're definitely going to be losing because everybody's going to have it as long as it's a requirement. Matt, even when we guide people and they're following our process externally, we feel good about what they're doing with us. There's a company that I'm aware of. I won't go too deep into the details, but they hit the lottery, so to speak. It's not a great lottery to hit, but the DoD sent their own contractors to do the assessment.
Wow.
They didn't have a third party like, a local company here in Kentucky, but it became evident to the DoD contractors that, yep, you've got all your documentation, but you guys aren't doing it. That's a tough lesson to learn because they did go through the readiness process. They did a lot of remediation. They just didn't do a great job of cascading it down. And, I think about companies like your all's. IT's not a whole lot different from building things, in my opinion. We probably troubleshoot a little bit more than you guys, but there's a lot of institutional knowledge. There's a lot of peers training other peers. There's employees that have been here for 20 years that do a great job. All of a sudden, I got this written policy that tells me how to do it differently. Now they've got grief and they've got denial and they don't understand. So I like to try to coach companies, make sure you communicate to your employees really, really well that this is, you have a part in this too, because that's what the auditor goes and looks at. How are you handling those blueprints that you guys get? You know what I mean? But going back to that story of the company that hit the lottery, 80 C3PAOs in the country, their calendars are filling up quick. So if they fail that audit, they got to wait till they can get on the schedule again to try again. They're tightening up might be really quick, but now they got to wait. I'm sure there was some lost revenue or lost opportunity in that time.
That brings up a really good point, John. It kind of leads me to my next point. I do want this to be informative. I don't want this to be a, oh my gosh, the sky is falling. I'm going out of business. Can you speak to the timeline expectations? We know that we're going to start seeing it in some contracts. To your point, in October, November of this year, there are going to be some things that are out of your control. You've been talking about the C3PAO. There's not a lot of them. We saw it firsthand. We've had them on the schedule since January of this year, and we're looking at a September, October timeframe for
Yeah.
our audit. There's nothing you can do about that. There's nothing I can do about that. So that's unexpected. But somebody calls you again today. I saw the podcast. I need to get started on my journey. What are you telling them, and what can they kind of expect, at least for what ABS can control?
So the whole journey, 6 to 12 months, again, depending on what your assessment looks like. The assessment typically takes 2 to 4 weeks. That's when you've got the roadmap of what do you got to do. That's the plan, right? So depending on how much you have to do, that's going to tell you really how long you of a road you've got. In small businesses, we can get really creative and we can work fast if we have an initiative that we're all on board with. We've gotten things done at ABS in a short amount of time. It's been pretty amazing seeing some of the things we've done. But you can't drive CMMC faster than you can drive it kind of fast. You can, have the multiple projects going on at the same time, but then you could disrupt your business. So there's kind of a fine line of how fast you go. The auditor's definitely a bottleneck, but I love using AI, Matt. But I don't know if everybody else has noticed the cost of everything else that we use, computers, laptops, network gear, all of that cost is going up because AI companies have dibs on that hardware and the processing power. The lead times for network equipment, we're seeing 3 to 6 months in some cases just to get the equipment that you might need to remediate this. So by November of 2026 is what the rules are saying. You've got to have had to have passed a C3PAO audit, or you're probably not going to win your bids.
It's just the reality of where we are. They've changed the date on this at 100 times. It's possible that they get to October 31st and decide they're going to give you a couple more months, but I wouldn't bet on it. I would take it serious. And kind of with that, John, as we kind of wind it down and wrap it up, I know you've heard me talk a little bit about you guys using ABS for our journey. If we get a client in the door that's asking us about it, I'm pushing them over your old way. Hey, go talk to ABS. Tucker's done a fantastic job of kind of building that roadmap and helping us out and helping us with the documentation and everything that goes along with it. Why contact ABS for CMMC help? And then the second part to that is, who do they need to contact provided they're listening today and they want to reach out?
Let me tackle that last one first. I am happy to have an initial just friendly conversation to dig deeper into the details of anybody that happens to see this video or listen to the audio. I'd love to have just a friendly conversation. If it makes sense, we'll pull one of our consultants in to just kind of have a pregame discussion, dig a little bit deeper than I can, and then get the assessment kicked off. Why use ABS is a great question, Matt. I've been here 21 years. I was delivering pizzas before I worked in an IT company. We have a culture of just wanting to help people solve their problems, and we do that through delivering IT experiences, right? So we're here to truly help. And in this case, we just want you at minimum to help you understand where you're at and where you need to go and roughly how much it costs. I would love to use our 31 years of technical expertise and our our cybersecurity team of 10 people and our compliance guys that are leading multiple customers through this. I would love to bring our experience to that as well. But at the end of the day, we just want to help people. We're plugged in with C3PAOs. We're in peer groups where, going back to the timeline changes, none of them expect the timeline to change. The only expectation of change that we have is evolution with the security landscape. Your
Right.
controls are probably going to change every year, because threat actors are also going to use AI and get better at what they do. But we don't see timelines changing in terms of getting this thing done.
As you know, I mean, we've tried a few things with written letters, to our local congressman to try to push it along, and got the message back that the national security interest of the United States is the number one priority. Tough cookie. You comply with it, or you move on. So, man, John, this has been very informative. I appreciate you coming on and explaining it. I'll be sure to put your contact information when we start to publish this. Put your contact information down. In the event anybody's listening, can't jot it down, can't see it or whatever, you're welcome to contact me. I'll push you guys along to ABS. I've done it before. We'll continue to do it. But John, thanks so much, man. I appreciate you coming on.
I appreciate the invite, Matt. I hope at least a couple of people learned something from us today. We're happy to help anywhere we can. Thanks again for the opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you all for joining. I appreciate it. We'll catch you on the next episode of Building Success.